ago, it happened these days. Chris Woodward has more on a new website aiming to fill in the gap.
The website is called letsgoshooting.org and comes from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the trade association for the firearms industry. Bill Broussard of the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Let'sGoShooting.org. It's a comprehensive online resource for all things related to target shooting and gun safety. If you're interested in the shooting sports, you can find a range there. You can learn about the different types of shotgun, rifle, and handgun sports. You can learn about safety. You can print out targets, and you can view a lot of instructional videos online there.
The launch of letsgoshooting.org is timely in that it comes just before National Shooting Sports Month,
which is this August, and that's a time to make it a point to enjoy target shooting with friends and maybe introducing somebody new to recreational shooting. You know, put it on the calendar, make it a date, and get out to the range.
Speaking of ranges, they're not just for the men, ladies.
Women are the fastest growing segment of the shooting sports. You're seeing clubs pop up all over the country of women shooters. They're very eager to introduce other women to the shooting sports because it's a lot of fun and recreational and social.
Even if you're interested in owning firearms for personal protection, it's important to get training at the range. I'm Chris Woodward.
The Federal Reserve says U.S. industrial production climbed 0.6% in June, recovering from a drop in May. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
It's time to call your senators. We need to tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Senators respond to constituent calls. So call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Right now joining us, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. He's a key member of both the Foreign Relations and Homeland Security Committees. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Let me get right to the question. Do you believe that President Trump's meeting with Putin made America safer?
You know, I think engagement with our adversaries, conversation with our adversaries is a good idea. Even in the height of the Cold War, maybe at the lowest ebb when we were in the midst of the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think it was a good thing that Kennedy had a direct line to Khrushchev. I think it was a good thing that we continued to have ambassadors to Russia, even when we really objected greatly to what was going on, even during Stalin's regime. So I think that it is a good idea to have engagement, and I think that what is lost in this is that I think there's a bit of Trump derangement syndrome. I think there are people who hate the president so much that this could have easily been President Obama early in his first administration setting the reset button and trying to have better relations with Russia. And I think it's lost on people that they are a nuclear power. They have influence in Syria. They're in close proximity to our troops in Syria. They are close to the peninsula of North Korea and may have some influence that could help us there. The other thing that's lost, and people forget this completely, the Russians tried to help us stop the Boston Marathon bombing. We actually did help them stop a terrorist attack in St. Petersburg because we were communicating and exchanging information. All those things are good,
but Senator,
and because people hate Trump so much, all of that's being lost.
Yeah, I have to agree with him. That was Rand Paul speaking to Wolf Blitzer on CNN, and we clipped out the bits where they were just combatively interrupting. Wolf was interrupting Senator Paul. Senator Paul was trying to get his statements out. There's a real animus there, not between the two of them. They've actually known each other for over a decade, and they've had so many interviews together. Rand Paul actually rebuked him during the interview and said, you know, you're usually better than this with the interviews. You usually don't interrupt. And he really took offense to the rudeness that was on display. But Wolf Blitzer wasn't there for Rand Paul. He was there to get points out while Rand Paul was listening so that he could use that later to say, look, I told the Republicans, you know, that Putin is a bad actor. He's doing this, he's doing that. It's just hypocritical. So welcome to the program. Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Great to be with you today. We have a jam-packed show. We're going to be speaking with Vince Patton in the next segment. He's a Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, retired, and National Commander and President for the Non-Commissioned Officers Association. He's going to come on and talk to us about this African-American Civil War Memorial and the museum's 20th anniversary. So kind of a feel-good segment, a little bit of a break from the toughness that we're experiencing on the foreign policy front. And then today we're going to get into, so President Putin had a few things to say to the media, and he did some interviews. Chris Wallace got to ask him some very pointed questions. And I've chosen out a little bit of that to discuss here on the show today because this is a complex situation. It's just not enough to scream Russians bad, Russians evil, Putin devil, and then, stomp our feet and make angry faces. We really have to understand the dynamic here. There is no world in which the United States cannot interact with Russia. The better the relations, in the face of their duplicitous behavior, Russians are not going to suddenly become choir boys and choir girls and start suddenly cooperating with us and stop their espionage efforts and everything else that they engage in just because we're America, or, they fully understand who we are and we understand who they are. I think the flubub in the media right now is giving off an aura of immaturity and ignorance on behalf of Americans. And I don't believe Americans are ignorant. And I don't believe we're immature in understanding that you can be in a friendly posture and try to work together on things where you can find common ground while acknowledging that if there were ever a time where we didn't have a military or NATO didn't exist, that Russia would be riding through, indiscriminately annexing countries and doing what they do. And that we would not. There's a world in which we can acknowledge those things and they can exist at the same time. I think when we have the conversations at that level, then we can account for what appear to be odd behaviors on behalf of our president. I said yesterday, we will come to understand more as more is exposed about what they discussed. And we do know more today. We actually know more about what was a lot of they had to work through a number of different issues in their conversation. And there have been times where the Russians have actually worked to help us. One of those times that we don't talk about often is when we had the Boston bombings. The Russians had some intel on that and they shared it. They were trying to prevent the Boston bombing from actually happening, and then they helped with the investigation afterwards. We actually thwarted a terror attack in their country. We offered the intel that we had, and they happily received it and thanked us for it. So there have been times where we've been together, and there will be times in the future where we are together, and an opportunity will present itself for America to help Russia or for Russia to help America, and we will do so. That doesn't mean that what he calls bad actors in his country won't still be hacking and launching cyber attacks. But there was a point made about that, and it's a brief one. The fact is, Russia spends $70 billion a year on defense spending, and that's their max. That's them, pilfering from other pots to make sure they can do that. We spend $700 billion. So there is no comparison. Culturally, they have a beautiful culture. It doesn't compare to our own. And that's with all of our negative parts of our culture. That's the whole kit and caboodle. So that includes all the things that we constantly rail against here on this program, the pornography, the moral degradation, all of those things included. Our culture outpaces theirs. The proof is that people aren't killing themselves to immigrate to Russia. They are killing themselves to immigrate here. On every metric, the United States outpaces and outclasses Russia. There is one area where they seem to be extraordinarily proficient and work very hard, and that is cyber attacks. They're great at it, and they know it. And so it's their strong suit. They don't just do it to America. They also attack in the cyber realm other foreign countries. That it's a part of what they consider to be their aggressive posture. They use that to make up for areas that they are lacking in, such as their defense spending, such as their other efforts. So We know this, right? We know and understand this. But it doesn't sound like the media knows and understands this. They also have a distinct ability, our national media, to be so upset when Donald Trump doesn't appear to be bullying President Trump or President Putin, Trump not bullying Putin. But when you look at their same behavior when President Obama was talking to Sergei Kislyak and said, after my election, I'll be a lot more flexible. They acted like that hot mic never happened. They didn't care that, yes, there are photographs of President Obama shaking hands with President Putin, and they're shaking hands, and Obama's considerably taller than Putin, and he's glaring down at him while they shake hands. There are other times they're seated on a stage together in a Q&A type forum, and Obama and Putin laugh and then give each other the, bro handshake where they pull their arms back and then kind of go in fast for handshake and then heartily shake and laugh while they're shaking. Was that a problem? Was that legitimizing a dictator? I can tell you this. You know what's one thing a dictator doesn't need? To be legitimized. If you're a dictator and a former KGB head and a lifelong spy and the head of Russia, lifetime Russian head, yeah, they have elections, but we all know who it's going to be. If you have a reputation for people dying when they oppose you in your own country, for people dying when they oppose you in other foreign countries, if you have a reputation for horrible things happening to people who don't like you, yet you routinely deny it and say that crime is a problem in all nations, not just, America or not just Russia. It's not about legitimizing. Look, Putin is a legitimate leader of Russia, and we have a geopolitical relationship with the nation state of Russia. We trade with them and we work in concert with them when it is beneficial to both parties and an agreement can be reached. So there's no legitimizing here. Now, I understand the concern with Kim Jong-un, who doesn't have an international presence, who doesn't have a currency that's traded on the open market, who doesn't have a country that has legitimate exports, that is, basically it's a tiny little, it's not just a dictatorship in the sense that it's run by a single person. It's like a tiny, just barely above water type of a country. I understand people talking about legitimizing Kim Jong-un, not wanting to legitimize him, not wanting to make him appear stronger than he is. It is ridiculous to try to act as if a meeting between the leader of the United States and the leader of Russia legitimizes anything. Putin's already legitimate. His country is already in relationship with China and Iran and Syria. His military operates around the globe. He has submarines and Navy vessels off both of our coasts, just outside of our line where we own the water and international water becomes, the line between those 2 points. He has that. This is not someone who's worried about being legitimized or delegitimized by the president of the United States. So that kind of conversation it's beneath us. We have to understand who we're talking about here. It's not that I respect Putin or I think he's a wonderful person or I want to have coffee with him. It's that we have to acknowledge who he is and what his country represents and the relationship between our two countries. So if that's the case, then it makes complete and utter sense that after they've had a 2-hour meeting and possibly come to some agreements, that Donald Trump wouldn't come out and basically, be rude or take the opportunity to smack him around verbally. And Putin makes the same point. We're going to listen to some audio of Putin. Obviously, he speaks through the translator. And he says, we don't meet with foreign leaders to be rude. It's his responses to the questions are so kind of commonsensical. It's like, you almost feel like he's kind of sighing and going, oh, really? That's what you're asking me? And some of it, he's out and out lying. You can tell that. But the exasperation belies his ability to basically comprehend why our media is so all up in arms. It's the open hatred of Donald Trump. And so how do you troll that? How do you troll a media that openly hates Donald Trump and thinks that he colluded with Russians, which clearly he did not do, to be elected? Well, you tell that media that you wanted Donald Trump to be elected too. That was his moment and it just flew right over the heads of the media. he's trolling us. He said he wanted Donald Trump to win because Donald Trump said he wanted to normalize relations with Russia, between the United States and Russia. They should have immediately been like, oh, we're overplaying our hand here. We have given him way too much credit. Yeah, they did cyber attacks, but it didn't impact the election. The collusion is a joke. We got to find something else to run on. This guy's trolling us. He's making us look silly. But they didn't get it, because when you have Trump derangement syndrome, you literally cannot think. So here's Rand Paul, and he's finishing up about this idea that he's put forward that people are losing the big picture. It's number 4.
You're usually better than this, Wolf, at doing an interview. You need to allow the respondent to respond. It does matter who was in charge of the intelligence. It does matter because they started up some of this and ginned up this whole thing that have gone after the president saying he's committed collusion with Russia. No evidence of that, and it continues to go on. Who are the people that started this? James Clapper, who lied to the Senate, said they weren't collecting our information, and yet they were collecting all of our information and housing it in Utah. John Brennan has now accused, let me finish. John Brennan has now accused the president of treason. This is John Brennan, who voted for the Communist Party when he was a young man. John Brennan now thinks he's holier than everybody else, but these people had the power to collect every American's information. And these are the people that I am concerned use their bias against President Trump. And absolutely, I'm with the president on this. The intelligence community was full of biased people, including Peter Strzok, McCabe, and dozens of others.
And so what can we draw from that? Not everybody's picking up what the U.S. media is putting down about this horrifying meeting between Donald Trump and President Putin. Everyone didn't see it the way the U.S. media saw it. I think there were some low points, obviously. There were some high points. The president says he accepts the U.S. intelligence agency's conclusions on Russian meddling. What more can we do? We'll be back with more right after these messages. Find us at afr.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and you can call in at 866-963-2037. We'll be right back.
You know, people often ask me, Tim, what's your favorite part of the Holy Land Tour? I've been leading Holy Land Tours for many years now. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, I learned how to lead these Israel tours from my dad, who started doing them in the 60s. And then he taught me in the 80s and 90s. And now my wife Allison and I lead these tours annually to Israel. And we love going because we love seeing people's eyes when they see things such as the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River and the Garden Tomb and the Wailing Wall. See all these things for the first time, and maybe the last time in many folks' lives, because this is a bucket list trip. We're going to be going in March. If you want a brochure sent to your mailbox, give us a call at 800-FAMILIES, 800-FAMILIES, option 5. And we'll send you a brochure. If you want to go to the website, everything's there, twholyland.com, twholyland.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I have a friend who told one of his children, I would rather you had not been born than to see you go to hell. Karen and I have sat with friends who have wept over children who have rejected the faith. I can't think of anything more discouraging than to have your children reject the faith. Some people think, all I have to do is get my kid to attend a Christian school and go to a good youth group and stay in a good environment and filter what they watch on TV and surf the internet, and that means they'll turn out fine. Not necessarily true. 2 Kings chapter 23, verses 30 and 32 remind us of this. Listen to these words beginning in verse 30. Then the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in place of his father. Now verse 32. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord according to all that his fathers had done. Now his immediate dad, Josiah, was a godly man. In fact, he was the one God had used to usher in tremendous reform and revival. But Junior didn't take after his dad. He didn't follow his lesson. Notice, he did wrong because it was his choice. I think we need to take it easy sometimes on parents of prodigal kids. It may not have to do with their parenting at all. It may just be the pull of evil in the child's life. Well, here's what I want you to remember and do today. Don't make assumptions about the spiritual lives of your children. Place them in God's hand and ask God to do a deep work in their lives, causing them to embrace the faith for themselves.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org. livingalegacy.org. Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being with us today. We have a lot to cover, and I just want to give an update. I know this is breaking news. The president had a pool spray after he met with members of Congress this afternoon, and according to the White House press corps, the quotes from the president are, "I have full faith in our intelligence agencies. I accept our intelligence community conclusion that Russia's meddling in 2016's election took place." And then he added, "There was no collusion." On the 2018 midterms, the president says we are doing everything in our power to prevent Russian interference in 2018. And he says that President Obama was given information just prior to the election, the last election that occurred in 2016, and they decided not to do anything about it. The reason they decided not to do that was pretty obvious, because they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. He also said the Obama administration buried information on Russian meddling. So there are a few other comments, but I want to get to our guest for this segment. This is breaking news. I just received it in my email box 3 minutes ago. So this is a meeting that just concluded between congressional Republicans who were scheduled to meet with President Trump today, well in advance of his trip overseas. And so he's had this meeting with them, and now he's given some information. Also spotted at the pool spray were John Kelly, Ivanka Trump, Bill Shine, John Bolton, Mike Pence, and Steve Mnuchin. So they were also in attendance. So I'll update you as things come in from the White House. But that is the breaking news right now, fresh from White House press corps. So it's my pleasure to welcome Vince Patton. He's a Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, retired, National Commander and President of the Non-Commissioned Officers Association. Vince, thank you for joining the show today, sir.
Thank you, Stacy, for having me. Really appreciate it.
It's great to speak to you, and wonderful to speak to a former NCO. My father was in the Army on active duty, and he was an NCO as well. So,
all right. As they say in the Army, hooah.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love to talk about the African American Civil War Memorial. It's nice to have a good news segment to talk about something positive. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, my goodness, absolutely. And I'm glad that, as you said, as something good to talk about. The African American Civil War Memorial and Museum, which is in Washington, D.C., located in what is called the Shaw section of Washington, D.C. And the interest of that is that Colonel Shaw was a Civil War officer, and he led the United States colored troops, and was very prominent in the creation of Howard University. So it was very significant that they put that museum in the neighborhood that was named after him. But this particular museum and memorial, I think, has been a best-kept secret for 20 years, in the sense of that we have a lot of monuments and museums and so forth that are all over the country, as well as in the Washington, D.C. area, but nothing really told the story that has been somewhat quiet in regards to African Americans who fought in the Civil War, and they fought on both sides. By the way, more detailed information provided from African Americans who were on the Union side, because they were registered and so forth. And there's very little to nothing other than the fact just some known information that there were African Americans that fought with the Confederates, although most it was determined that they were sort of ordered to because of the slavery, but there's no real documentation on that. But this particular memorial, which I visit frequently because for me, as an African American who reached the highest enlisted rating in the United States military as the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, and the first African American to reach that for my particular service, it's just really a chilling, wonderful event to go and to just pause and not just look at the statue, but the 209,145 names that are etched on that entire memorial of black troops who served during a time when they were not defined as citizens until the passing of the 14th Amendment, which was well after the Civil War. So it's very important that we celebrate this particular event because it's coming up on the 20th anniversary, starting tomorrow, of the dedication of this memorial. The hard work that many men and women have put into putting this particular memorial together and honoring those 209 plus thousand African American troops who served with the Union Army.
It's pretty amazing, and you're right. It's not something that people know about. So where exactly is this memorial located?
Pretty easy to find. It's at the corner of Vermont and U Street Northwest. In fact, it's right at a metro stop. When you, I forgot what color line that is, but if you take the metro stop that takes you to U Street, you come off the elevator and it's staring right in front of you. It's where the memorial is, and it's directly across the street from the memorial is the museum.
Okay, and then the museum, we're talking about downtown D.C., near the other major national monuments. Am I right?
Not too far from downtown. It's not really considered downtown. They refer to that as the U Street corridor, but it's probably no more than a mile or so from downtown area, but it's not very far.
Okay, so it's within, if you're there, you can actually see in the distance the other monuments.
Not exactly. You can walk to the other, I guess it's about a mile away, but you can't really see much from where that location is by the buildings that are in the way, of course. But as the crow flies, it's no better than a mile away.
Which, for tourists in Washington, D.C., a mile is well within the distance that you're going to traverse going to all of the different monuments and the Smithsonian museums, et cetera, et cetera. So this is within the purview of when you're touring Washington, D.C., you can definitely see it. And I've been there so many times because my parents live in Springfield. And so I'm surprised I've not been there before. I may have as a child and I don't remember it, but as an adult, I don't think we've ever been. I know we haven't taken our kids, so that has to be on our list for visiting. So what's the museum like? What will we find if we decide to see the statue and then go into the museum? What will we find there?
Well, the museum has a lot of factual information about African Americans and how they served in the war. There are some old documents that were retrieved through the National Archives that talk specifically about troops and the types of units and what they served. There are some reenactors, African American troop reenactors who come and talk about. They're in character and they talk about their life that as they served during the war and so forth, and what they had to deal with, and the challenges that they faced because of being black and fighting in a war, as well as being black fighting in a war and getting paid less than what the white soldiers were getting paid. So it's a wonderful experience. It's not a very big museum. The museum actually was created from an old grade school that was built in the late 1800s, and they transformed that into the museum. But it's a great learning experience type place to go to.
I think it's worth it because a lot of people look at that and listen to what you've described and they'll say, oh, it's a small museum. Oh, it highlights how they were paid less. Oh, I see it as a testimony to the strength of a people who didn't have all that they felt they deserved in the way of equality, but they fought for it in the hopes of getting it. So they were looking to the future for what might be, and they did that anyway. And so I think it's a very strong representation of a part of our history that we should be happy to learn about and to incorporate into what we know about everything, the good and the bad about America, that brings us to today, where we are also just blessed to take part in the liberty that we have here in America.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And as I often say this whenever I talk about the museum, that, I go there with the feeling and the sense that I have stood on the shoulders of giants. As I said, I served 30 years in the U.S. Coast Guard, and to know that the legacy of people before me who did things because of what they believed and took aside from any of the other concerns and animosities that they had, but fought for the strength of freedom and to look at the future of freedom. That's very, very important, and it's a very, very powerful a place to go into, particularly someone like me or anyone with server, as you mentioned about your father and so forth, is that you can't help but think back about that particular area, not just in terms of what it was, but how far we have come. And if it wasn't for people who took those sacrifices to make that happen, goodness, we have to embrace our history, heritage, and traditions for where we are today and look back at those people who helped make it possible.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you not just for your service, but also for the work that you've done promoting the museum and getting this information out there. I think it's valuable for us to know as much as we can about our history and to appreciate it from the perspective of, as you said, standing on the shoulders of giants. So many people in this country who've gone before us, regardless of their racial background, who have provided us with the opportunity to live here today as we do, flaws and all, warts and all. We wouldn't want to be in any other country. And America it's indeed a privilege to be a citizen of this nation and also to get to be here with other Americans living the way that we do. It's a blessing.
Amen.
Thank you so much for joining today, Vince. Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, retired National Commander and President of the NCO Association. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you again soon. So I love those. Like, this is a good time for us to just stop and take stock. Imagine if you were born and your the first time you said yes, you said da instead of yes. That would be you being born into the nation state of Russia. And no offense to Russians. Obviously, they love their country. They have a beautiful country. I've been to Russia before. In high school, I got to visit. And Moscow is a glorious city. It's beautiful. And the Russian people are kind and they're generous and really, they're good people. But I'd rather be an American, blessed to be an American. And so it's not just this one museum, although he's really done a lot of work to promote this museum and to get the information out there. And I do want to visit it myself with my husband and our family. But there's so much for us to learn about our country and to just take stock and to be grateful. And so it was really nice to have that kind of good news and information for today's show. I had a few questions about the pool spray. Like, first of all, what is a pool spray? A pool spray is an impromptu gathering with the White House press corps and a member of the administration. So they have pool sprays on Air Force One where there are actual assigned seats on Air Force One. And so the press corps sits together in the section of the plane that's designated for them. And when one of the administration officials or the president, doesn't happen often with the president, usually it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Mr. Gidley, they'll just go to the back of the plane and they'll say, hey, do you have any questions for me? Or, hey, the president just wanted me to share with you, X, and they'll share it. And so that's what a pool spray is. A pool spray is basically the White House press corps gets to ask some questions of someone in the administration. And if this can happen anywhere the press corps is, someone can approach them who's from the administration, and it's a pool spray. So that's what happened after this meeting with the members of Congress. And after 15 minutes, the president began to speak. I gave you some of the quotes, but we had some additional questions about whether or not he said, I misspoke. I don't believe that's what he said. In fact, I have the quotes here, and I'll share them with you. When he was speaking on the topic of the relationship with Russia and his meeting with President Putin, the quotes from him on that were, he talked about getting along with Russia as a positive thing. Here's the quote: I enter the meeting with a firm conviction that diplomacy and engagement is better than hostility and conflict. They talked about problems in the Middle East, the civil war in Syria, the destabilizing activities in Iran, and mentioned that Iran is not the same country that it was 5 months ago. These are some of the things that Putin and Trump discussed. Russia and Putin agreed that they want to keep nuclear weapons out of North Korea. And he mentioned that having a dialogue with Russia is a good thing. That's President Trump. So what do we take from this? Well, it's kind of as we thought it was. They were in there discussing these thorny, really difficult world issues. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show and you've heard some of the experts we've had come on the program who've talked about our role in the Middle East and how there are so many different factions of people in the Middle East who have something that they want, that they're working towards, and they have these competing interests because they practice different forms of Islam, or how difficult it has been decade after decade, successive presidencies from different administrations, different sides of the political aisle, and no one has been successful in dealing with the Kim Jong-un regime, the dad, the granddad, now the son. None of them have been easy to deal with. None of them have been forthcoming. None of them have been honest. And yet we still have gone on and done as much as we could. And on it goes. There are so many things going on around the world that are difficult that President Putin and President Trump would want to discuss. Does that change who President Putin is or who Russia is or what their aims are? No, it just means they sat down and discussed it to try to find some common ground where they could agree so that they could smooth the relationship. And it takes our troops and assets in areas, operational theaters where we operate and Russia operates with their troops. It calms those relations down as well. I mean, if you're interested in what we're doing in Syria with the Russian mercenaries, just Google General Mattis, Russian missionaries, and listen to him talk about how we are dispatching those guys into the next life, into the afterlife, with prejudice, hundreds at a time, not just with drone attacks, but with live artillery and our actual troops. I'm not saying that because that excuses anything, but this is not just some rose parade where we just go in and pick out which float we like and then agree on that and then move on. There's a lot at stake here. We need to give the president credit where it's due. And I mean, I'm just hoping for more clarification on some of his comments that I found a little bit unsettling. But all in all, it sounds like it was a successful meeting. So when we get back, we'll have more show for you. Keep it here.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Adopting children has made Psalm 139 come alive to Tony and me.
Verses 15 and 16 say, "You watched me as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book." We've kept those verses in our heart for many years. We know God has created all of our children for His glory and for them to be a part of our family.
And God knew before they were born that He would lend them to us to love and care for them here on earth. If you're considering adopting a child, read Psalm 139 and ask God to show you His plan.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible that says the heart of the fool inclines to the left just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Here's Steve Tiber.
8 Days of Hope started after Hurricane Katrina, helping people in Bay St. Louis, Waveland, Mississippi rebuild their homes back in 2005. Since then, this faith-based ministry has gone nationwide, and we've helped out dozens of cities, dozens of areas of the country after hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, or even snowstorms. And now you get a chance to be a difference maker. 8 Days of Hope 16. You can be the hands and feet of Jesus down in Houston from October 13th to October 20th. You can come for as little as 3 days or stay all 8 days. We provide the food and lodging. We're looking for skilled professional and people like me who are less skilled and just want to give back. For more information, go to our website, 8daysofhope.com. Click on the event, 8 Days of Hope 16, read the FAQs, and learn more about how you can make a difference with 8 Days of Hope.
Learn more and sign up to be a part of 8 Days of Hope 16 in Houston, Texas at 8daysofhope.com. That's 8daysofhope.com.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
I thought the news conference today, my opinion, was a bit curious because President Trump spent more time criticizing the Democrats and asking about the Democratic server than he did in criticizing Russia and asking about the GRU. There are many theories in the United States about why President Trump is so reluctant to criticize you, and I'd like to ask you about a couple of them. One is that you have something on him, compromat. The other is that as a skilled politician and a former KGB officer, you know how to play him. You use phrases like fake news and deep state. And my question is, do you find President Trump easy to deal with?
Well, the first point I'm about to make is, why did we talk about like the polite people? Why should this come as a surprise? Was it worth going all the way to Helsinki, going through the Atlantic to just insult one another? And well, it's not exactly the diplomatic standard in the world. There's no need to go and meet personally if you just want to insult another person. We met to try to find a way for improving our relationship and not aggravating it or destroying it completely.
So he had to give a little lesson in, diplomacy. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037. He's actually like, so why would I fly all the way around the Atlantic? And, it was a long trip for me. And then I'm going to just go there and be rude. In other words, I can be rude from a distance. Being rude does not require my physical presence. I thought that was pretty funny. Now, obviously, it comes through the translator. And so I have my own little tinfoil hat thing about Putin, that because he understands English, he actually understands it. And you can tell that he understands it because when he's in a meeting, the press conference they had together, whenever he's sitting and listening to questions, he clearly comprehends the answer to the question. He understands English. He may not have perfect 100%, understanding of English, but he has a really good grip on English, but he doesn't speak it. I don't believe that's because he can't speak English or he lacks the ability. I believe that he, as the head of Russia and a former KGB agent, shows us disdain by refusing to speak English because, American English is the business standard. Most nations, the people speak their home tongue, their native tongue, and then they learn English in grade school. They learn it because the world is run in English, basically. And to be a developed nation and to be considered cosmopolitan and really up to date and modern, you want to speak your own language and English, and then, of course, Portuguese or perhaps French, but definitely English. And so an acknowledgement of that for Putin is to say, yeah, but I don't speak English. So, I know you're not going to learn Russian as an American, and I'm definitely not going to learn English. I'm not going to speak it to you. I may even have a few English words in my, in my little toolbox. I may be able to curse people out in English, but I'm not going to speak any English to you. I'm not going to speak English on English television. I'm not going to validate you in that way. I'm Putin. That's what I think his thing is about, not because he obviously understands it. He nods while people are speaking English like, yeah, I heard what you said. He gets it. So he dealt out some pretty harsh rebukes of our media for the questions that they ask. And you all know I greatly respect Chris Wallace. I've interviewed him before. He is an outstanding journalist. I don't always agree with him, but he is outstanding. And so it was not a shock to me that he was the one who garnered the interview with President Putin, and he was able to do all of that. Now, he went on a little bit, and he basically asked President Putin straight out, do you have Komprat? You just heard him. Information on Trump. Komprat is Russian for compromising information. And Putin had a few things to say about that, too, which, again, it's almost shocking how commonsensical he is. It really is. If it wasn't coming through a translator, it would be that even much more shocking, I think. So it's number 2.
And the second part of the answer is whether we have something on them. We don't have anything on them, and there can't be anything on them. I don't want to insult President Trump when I say this, and I may come as rude, but before he announced that he will run for presidency, he was of no interest for us. He was a rich person, but, well, there's plenty of rich persons in the United States. He was in the construction business. He organized the beauty pageants. But no, it would never occur to anyone that he would think of running for president. He never mentioned his political ambitions. It sounds like it's another nonsense. I just mentioned this in the press conference. St. Petersburg Economic Forum was visited by 500 businessmen. Well, pretty much every one of them is a major industrialist, a tycoon, of a greater scale than President Trump. Do you think that our special services actually organize surveillance on each and every of them? Well, unlike you, unlike the United States, we don't do this. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough manpower to organize the total state of control. That's not part of our plans. And it's clear that we did nothing of that kind against Mr. Trump.
Such a pointed jab. So first of all, facts and evidence. Putin follows American politics, and he follows all factions of it. He is aware that libertarians and a huge faction of the conservative side actually see our government as too surveilling of American citizens. They collect too much information. They store too much data. They have too much of a grip on how many times you texted your husband last year and all the metadata on where you were when you texted him. All that stuff is disconcerting to Americans, and we feel it's unconstitutional. Whether they keep authorizing the Patriot Act through Congress is irrelevant to whether or not storing that much data on Americans without a warrant is constitutional. And Putin is aware of that. So what did he just say? Unlike your government, shade brigade. I mean, come on. He just went there. Unlike your government, we lack the manpower and resources to surveil everybody. You guys have lots of rich people in America. Donald Trump was in construction and he managed the beauty pageants, which was a dig. I mean, come on. He's sitting there insulting old Donald Trump from before he was president. We didn't know he had political aspirations. It was completely a surprise to us. It was kind of out of left field. And, we don't surveil everybody who comes into our country. And so 500 industrialist tycoons come to Russia for a conference. And most of them are richer than Donald Trump. They come from America where y'all got rich people hanging off trees there. And we were supposed to do what? Collect information on all of them, which to me, I mean, I got no proof. But when I'm listening to that, I hear, we thought about it. We looked into it, but we didn't have the manpower and resources. And this a bunch of rich dudes meeting. We didn't really think there would be much for us to get. In other words, if he's not a politician, why would we put special services on him to surveil him for what? Like, what will we get out of that but a waste of our time? We have bigger fish to fry. We have other people to follow that are really consequential, like Hillary Clinton. So I just was like, I'm listening to it. And again, no love. I don't think Putin's awesome. I'm not a fan. Please don't start sending me messages about how, I've served this country. I do not believe in Putin. He's not cool. But I got to say, old boy knows how to slide the digs in. He knows how to insult and to get at the point, to make the point that the same people who are really, really, really hoping that there are these horrible, that dossier that was created by Christopher Steele, that it's actually factual, that there are these, hotel incidences with the president. They hope that that's true. They hope that they can get copies of those tapes or some kind of validation of those tapes. And barring actual evidence, they'll just keep talking about the tapes as if they're real. They've already introduced them into the public psyche as verified fact, when in fact it's nothing but hearsay. And they want that, but they didn't want anything. They didn't want to know anything about the 500, what was it? It was $250,000 and $500,000. So Hillary Clinton was paid $250,000 for a speech in Russia. Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 for one speech. And then they also had multiple millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars funneled. It appeared to come from Russia, but it was really, Putin asserts in the same press conference, he asserted that the money came from the U.S. and some of our intelligence apparatus ran the money through Russia to get it back to Hillary Clinton. He said he wanted to investigate that. So here's what we know. After they met for 2 hours and they came together for this press conference, Donald Trump and, Vladimir Putin stood at the podium and they invited Mueller to come over to Russia and interview all of the people who are named in the indictment, and to then, after that, investigate with the help of the Russians to see if there's anything that went wrong, to basically the indictment, to prove the indictment, to investigate in Russia. The other thing that he said that he would do is he would be open to our intelligence services and Mueller and his team going through the extradition process, because we have extradition agreements with Russia and the United States. If we have someone in our country who's murdered people in Russia and they run home to the United States, they cannot escape the long arm of justice from Russia by doing so. We have an extradition treaty with them, meaning if we have people who've done crimes and they're American citizens, your American citizenship and your passport do not protect you from being extradited to Russia for prosecution and possibly, jail time, whatever. So we have an extradition treaty with them. So I've been saying it here on the show. There's no way these Russians come to the United States and allow themselves to be prosecuted. No, they won't come of their own will. But if our government goes through the process of applying for extradition and they meet the qualifications and whatever those are, then the Russians, according to the treaty that they have signed with us that is in effect, will extradite people to be tried here in the United States. So it is absolutely possible that if they were able to prove their case to the Russian government and follow the process, these people could be tried. Putin said this from the podium. So now that I've shared that with you, and the fact that he pointedly asserted that they want to investigate how money came from the United States through Russia and back to the Hillary Clinton Foundation, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. Now that we know that, now do we understand why everybody's so mad and why I'm over here giggling? I mean, the media is upset because he jabbed not just the media, he jabbed our American intelligence apparatus for all of the spying that they do on Americans, for the manpower we devote to that. He finds that comical. Now, admittedly, he doesn't have the manpower or the money or the resources, his government. He doesn't have enough people to do it himself. So he might be just throwing shade because he can't do it. You know how it is. You see somebody doing something awesome, and instead of going, wow, that's awesome, you go, yeah, she ain't doing anything. You do that because you know good and well she is doing something, but you just can't do it. How about it's a little bit of that? Because goodness knows, if Putin could amass the manpower and resources to surveil anyone he wanted to, he would be doing that instead of sitting up talking to Chris Wallace any day. He would much prefer to have that kind of power. He doesn't have it, so he pokes fun at it. But he also pokes fun at it because he knows hundreds of millions of Americans, maybe 90 million Americans, I don't know how many million Americans, but a significant number of Americans absolutely do not like our intelligence apparatus spying on us, reading all of our emails. I am the least likely person to commit an act of terror. Why do they need to read my emails? Why do they need to look over my metadata and know where I was when I texted my husband and said, what else do we need from the store? I don't see anything on the Wonder List. I'm at the gas station and I'm going to stop by the Schnucks. Why would they need to know that? Come on now. Why? Because they can? Okay. There's a lot of things we can do. It may be that you can do it, but is it expedient or is it a waste of time? Is it part of the reason why our government has now been found numerous occasions to have known about potential terror acts and not been able to stop it because they're too busy sitting up looking at all the little naked pictures that some of y'all be sending around? That's what's going on here. So Putin's mocking it, and he should. You know what I mean? You can recognize game when you see it. He should mock the American intelligence apparatus for looking at all of our metadata under the guise of stopping terrorism. And I'm no libertarian, but I can tell you that's what Rand Paul's problem is with all of the stuff that we're doing in the government. Now, he's a non-interventionist. He's like a, no war, just nobody ever fights anything. I can't get down with that. The reality is, if we were a country that just would never engage in war, we would not only not be a player on the international scene, all kinds of atrocities would be going on across the globe. And it's because we are willing to go and reach our long arms in and smash dictators and remove people from this and that and all these little countries. That is the reason why some of these people, many of these dictators and whatnot, they hold the line. They do bad things, but they don't go ham because they know America will reach in and take care of business. I have no respect for Putin, former KGB, but I have to say, the media and the intelligence apparatus got trolled. You guys want to talk about how Donald Trump didn't present well? Okay, have that conversation, but make sure and include the others who totally got jabbed by him, and they're not acknowledging it because they can't. They can't answer what he accused them of because they're guilty. We'll be back with more after this.
Urban Family Talk. The sexual revolution is falsely promised to satisfy the human heart.
God has a better way if we follow God's prescription.
Dr. Michael Brown offers hope for those trapped in the downward spiral of sexual immorality. The Freedom of Sexual Purity is a powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute. Get your copy today at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
This is American Family News. I'm Steve Jordahl. The president walked back some of the comments he made in Helsinki on Monday. Mr. Trump had been taking withering fire from enemies and allies alike because he appeared to publicly discount his own intelligence community when it came to Russian meddling in the 2016 elections. Specifically, he said he had no reason to believe that Russia would interfere. Today, he corrected what he said was a mistake.
I realize that there is a need for some clarification. In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia. So, just to repeat it, I said the word would instead of wouldn't.
House Republicans have used a party-line vote to block a Democrat measure aimed at condemning President Trump for his comments in Helsinki. It was the first vote testing how Congress would react. And one other possible mistake at Monday's summit, a reporter was forced out by Russian security right before the press conference between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. He explains his reason for holding up a sign at the event reading Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty, saying he wasn't protesting, but wanted to ask about nuclear weapons.
I thought that the Finnish officials would say, okay, we don't want you to do that, or okay, we understand that that's journalistic. It's aggressive journalistic, but it's journalistic and we'll let you do it.
That was Sam Husseini, reporter from The Nation magazine and director of communication for a nonprofit progressive organization. Former U.S. President Barack Obama is taking aim at the, quote, utter loss of shame among political leaders when they're caught in a lie and they just double down and lie some more. Obama's spirited speech in South Africa is his highest profile address since leaving office. He's marking the 100th anniversary of anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela's birth and giving an impassioned defense of the values held by Mandela. It's widely believed that he was taking a shot at President Trump. Although liberals were able to expand gender-neutral marriage rights at the Episcopal Church Triennial Conference in Austin, Texas, conservatives were able to claim some victories, as AFN's Bill Bumpus reports.
There were proposals made to make revisions to the Common Book of Prayer, and liberals came close to including gender-neutral language for God in the prayer book. But Jeff Walton, who directs the Anglican program for the Institute on Religion and Democracy, says ultimately that resolution did not go through. He gives a summary of the convention.
The big thing is conservatives didn't want to see the prayer book revised at this time, and that was killed off, and that was a victory. Conservatives didn't want to see Israel divestment go forward, and that was killed off, so that was a victory. Conservatives did not want to see an expansion of same-sex marriage rights, but on an incremental level, that is going to move forward, so that is a defeat.
Walton predicts church membership will continue to decline due to its action on marriage, but it could have been much worse.
I don't think it's as bad as it would have been if there was a prayer book revision, especially if they did prayer book revision that involved putting the same-sex marriage rights in the prayer book. That would have put it in every pew, and people would have been very touchy about having the prayer book changed, and that would have caused a larger group of people to leave.
Walton explains many viewed revising the prayer book as impractical at this time. I'm Bill Bumpus.
Some members of Congress say the president's tariffs could have a negative effect on the future of many local newspapers. More from Fox's Gernal Scott.
The concern for the lawmakers is a recently imposed tariff on Canadian newsprint, a major expense for local papers. It stemmed from a complaint from a Washington state newsroom saying competitors north of the border were unfairly using government subsidies to sell papers at lower prices. Members of Congress worry that attempts to compete and pay up to 30% more for newsprint could lead to major decisions in newsrooms, such as limiting coverage, cutting staff, or even staying in business. Concerns were voiced at a hearing of an International Trade Commission that could decide to make the tariffs permanent. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Find more news and information online at onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app. For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordahl.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
But just a few moments ago, Barack Obama had this to say. Let's listen.
Given the strange and uncertain times that we are in, and they are strange, and they are uncertain. Each day's news cycles bringing more head spinning and disturbing headlines. I thought maybe it would be useful to step back for a moment and try to get some perspective.
Speaking at a Nelson Mandela lecture event in South Africa, the words of Barack Obama a few moments ago. Your thoughts, Brad?
Disgraceful. The fact that a former American president on foreign soil would say the comments he did about, veiled comments, by the way, not direct, about this president and the current state of American affairs. It's beyond the pale that the president would do that.
It's beyond the pale. So you're not going to get to hear the audio of the guy who comes on afterwards, who's he's an Obama supporter, and he goes into this big long tirade about all these things, which, when you start your argument off about President Trump by couching it in, well, he's a racist, you're losing because that's simply not true. It's demonstrably false, in fact. And so it basically derails the rest of the conversation because no one can take you seriously because you're dealing in these falsehoods. So we want to be able to engage on thorny issues and have discussions where we're not going to agree, but the discussion needs to be had because we learn a lot when we're talking to people that we disagree with. It is important to understand what liberals are observing, what they think they see, what they feel are problems that can be handled in a certain way and what their solutions are. That's important. But if you're just going to stompy foot and, suck your thumb and act as if this is all about racism, that's not serious. We can't talk right now because we have other stuff we have to do, and you're just not being, you're not, we can't engage. It's just too much. You have to go back and regroup and come back when you're ready to have real chat. So you hear this discussion, and that was a Bush staffer ripping President Obama for saying we live in these so-called strange times. You know what's strange? It's strange that the Democrats can't seem to keep control of their party. So they've got the Democrats in the state of California rebuking Dianne Feinstein, who has been a consistent and reliable hard left liberal who used to actually rail against illegal immigration because she thought it hurt working families in America. Now she thinks it's great that illegals have a right to be here and work and take the jobs from the working families who are American. She thinks that's great. She's been hard on the left, but you can never be leftist enough. And she's learning now. You've got this, what they call a jungle primary, where a bunch of different people are vying for the same seat. Dianne Feinstein won the seat, but the endorsement from the state party went to Kevin DeLeon. He actually received the endorsement because he reflects the increasing strength of the state party's liberal core. And the liberal core was actually energized by the election of Donald Trump. They're mad, they're stompy foot, they're clutching their pearls, they're ready to make a change. They want to resist. So DeLeon is a former state Senate leader from Los Angeles. He received 65% of the vote from about 330 members of the state party's executive board, more than the 60% that was needed to secure the endorsement. Now, the endorsement doesn't mean that he won the primary, but he won their endorsement. That is a serious problem for Democrats from California like Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, and yes, Dianne Feinstein. Now, it's not clear that the endorsement will have a significant effect on the general election. Feinstein crushed DeLeon in the June primary, winning every county and finishing in first place with 44% of the overall vote. But this is a statement about who the party leadership wants to see in power. So Dianne Feinstein, she's been there a while, decades. She will be passing the baton. And this is who the party leadership is already telegraphing to the voters who they want the baton to go to, this hardcore leftist. The endorsement can come with hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign money, which the DeLeon campaign will have to help raise, as well as party volunteers and political organizing assistance. He needs that support to increase his odds of victory in November. Feinstein had $7 million in campaign cash socked away as of May 10th, 10 times what DeLeon had. But did Ocasio-Cortez have the same amount of money as the guy she beat? Not at all. She beat that guy with 1/10 of what he had raised funds-wise. She had an active voter campaign, and she went and knocked those doors, and she had the viral online social media activity. And she beat him. So it's possible that DeLeon could go into November and beat Dianne Feinstein. I mean, these are some interesting times to be watching Democratic politics, admittedly. So then, speaking of Barack Obama and him fixing his mouth to go out and criticize somebody for lying even when they've been found to lie, a guy who got PolitiFact's 4 Pinocchios for the lie that he told about everybody's health insurance being $2,500 cheaper per year after the passage of Obamacare. That was not only found to be a lie, it was like 4 Pinocchios is the most you can get. It was a total, utter, bald-faced lie that he repeated. Some people say 41 times they found video of him on 41 separate occasions repeating that lie, even after he knew it wasn't true, because budget, OMB had run the numbers and they were like, that's not happening. Like, everybody's paying more. And he was still running around saying that. Then you've got Hillary Clinton, and we talked about this just a smidge, her speaking to the American Federation of Teachers. And she started off by saying, "I'm so tired I can barely stand." But that is in reference to the introduction she was given by the head of the teachers union. She was tired because the lady had given her this 20-minute glowing. I mean, it was just like, I was thinking to myself as I listened to some of it, I'm like, who's she talking about? Not Hillary Clinton. Yes, she was talking about Hillary Clinton. Just glowing introduction about how wonderful, and Madam President, this and that. So yeah, it's real. It is real. So what did Hillary talk about to the American Federation of Teachers? Well, she went back in time where she didn't have any rights and she complained about it. She said she received the Women's Rights Award from the union. And then she basically spent all of her acceptance speech time talking about how she didn't she was oppressed. She didn't have things that she deserved to have. When I was growing up, there were scholarships I couldn't get, colleges I couldn't attend, jobs I couldn't apply for just because I was a girl. Okay, you're 70. So it was rough 70 years ago or 65 years ago. It was rough for everybody. She's complaining about scholarships she couldn't get. She grew up upper middle class. I could ask my mom, who is not as old as Hillary Clinton, but is definitely old enough to remember back when she was growing up and, all of the travails of growing up in the South. And it was Jim Crow South, separate but equal. I mean, how dare Hillary Clinton try to make everybody feel sorry for her privileged upbringing when all Americans were experiencing different forms of discrimination and all kinds of stuff going on all those years ago. That's what was happening back then. She's not special. I don't understand why people let her get away with that. So you had it rough in Chicago's suburbs with your, for your well-to-do parents, and there were some scholarships you couldn't get? Wow. Okay. So it's not very long ago, she says, the classified ads were divided into help wanted -male, help wanted -female. She criticized girls' half-court basketball because back when she was a girl, girls played half-court basketball and boys played full court. Like Hillary Clinton was a huge basketball player back then. Come on now. She said they wouldn't let us run on the full court. She fear-mongered about the Trump administration nominating Judge Brett Kavanaugh. They've gutted funding for public schools and universities. Not true. They've rolled back protections against discrimination for students. Not true. She even went into a lengthy broadside against Trump's policies. They're trying to rip the heart out of America. Really? Okay. They want to turn us into transactional units, claiming Trump supporters want a man-eat-man, woman-eat-woman society. No, that's what the Democrats want. That's what the Democrats see when they see me walking into a store or into a building. They see, black woman, minority, victim. That's what they see. They don't know anything about you. You could be totally powerful and killing it in your personal life. And they look at you and they're like, she's black. She's obviously a Democrat. She's one of us. She understands the plight of the LGBTQ etc. community. No, I don't. I don't understand that at all. I'm a child of the king. I understand my positioning to be that of someone who is a bondservant to Jesus Christ, not to some demographic box or ideology that they've made up for me. So, I'm tired of them saddling me with that. I'm tired of them saddling you with that. We are all capable of so many fantastic things, but as long as we're sitting up looking at each other and going, well, he's a white man. He's a part of the patriarchy. Hey, he's out to get me. Yeah, anybody can get you if you think somebody who doesn't even know you is sitting up plotting to get you. You have some kind of narcissistic victim disorder. You have mental problems. You need counseling. You don't need to be told by Democrats that you can or can't do something. I mean, I defy anybody to figure out what it is that I'm actually doing when I'm not on this show. Like, how would you know what I'm working on? I could be working on total world domination, or I could be spackling the ceiling in the foyer because we had a leak. How would you know? And why would I care? This is the problem. Most Americans, that's how they think. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm working on my to-do list. Could you please work on yours and stop worrying about whether or not I'm a victim? So she says they want to turn us against each other. They want to divide and conquer. At the conclusion of her wildly spurious statements, the union chicks and men applauded wildly. Yeah, they bought that. Don't buy it, folks. None of that stuff is true. In fact, one of the stories that we didn't get to yesterday that I want to quickly just zip through right here in this last couple of minutes. And I'm sorry, I think I missed a caller. If you want to call into the show, we'll definitely get you next segment. We actually have a show instead of a guest next segment. So if you want to call in, 866-963-2037. The National Guard deployment, remember when that was making news and all of the governors from the liberal states were like, we ain't sending no Guard troops. We ain't going to support Trump. He's a dictator. And he's this and he's that. He's a racist. Well, guess what? They still managed to get some troops down to the southern border. So remember, that was mid-April. And the ones who sent troops, the states that sent troops, they went down. And so the troops, when they activate the National Guard, it doesn't give them police capabilities. They're just basically active duty military. So when you swear in to the military, it's all other duties as assigned. So you swear in to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, to follow all lawful orders of officers placed above you, and any order or directive given to you by the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military, which is the President of the United States, or any of his subordinates, so any officer. And you also say, and all other duties as assigned, which basically encompasses everything they missed in those first few sentences. And so if you're an active guard or inactive guard and they activate you, or if you're on active duty and they say, we're deploying to the southern border, you're going down there and you're going to do whatever they tell you to do. So what they've been able to do is they've been able to arrest 10,805 people since April, people who entered the country illegally. Deportable alien arrests have been made by these National Guard troops who've been deployed to the border. Now, y'all know my motto is enforcement is the deterrent. Laws that aren't enforced are not laws, and they do not deter crime. Laws that are enforced deter crime. It is so simple. It's so basic. And I learned a lot about that from my father when he was on active duty as a police officer in the military since then. And if you talk to any person in law enforcement, and they'll say any law that you don't enforce, it's basically not a law, because as soon as people figure out that it's not being enforced, they're going to break it. And they're going to break it and break it and break it and break it. And the minute they'll stop is when they see people start getting enforced. Fines, arrests, whatever the case may be, whatever the punishment is, if you enforce it, then people will pay attention. Not everybody. There's always going to be somebody who's going to break the law, but most people will follow the law if it's enforced. So you got the National Guard presence leading to the interception of more than 3,300 others who were turned back before they even set their juicy little toes into the United States. There are 1,601 National Guard troops at the border assisting with various surveillance, maintenance, and related operations, and the number could tick up considerably if the National Guard troops President Trump approved on April 4th are called in on a future request from CBP. I like it. I like it a lot. So we'll be back with more after these messages. Visit us online at stacyontheright.com, urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net, and on our social media accounts. Hit the follow button. We'll be right back, y'all.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for a healthcare plan, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called Medi-Share. Medi-Share is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, Medi-Share members have shared more than $2.5 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with Medi-Share. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings may be less or more, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join Medi-Share anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. Just hit *345. That's *345. *345.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said you would do greater works than he did. We have been hearing all throughout this series is you and I need to trust the power of prayer. Paul said it this way, and I said it one night recently in talking. I found out that God, Almighty God, is attracted to weakness. Paul said, when I'm weak, I'm strong. And he said, I rejoice in my weakness, so that the grace of God, the power of God, the ability of God will tabernacle or rest on me. I want you to understand that God is waiting for somebody to get weak enough that they do what he says, not in their strength, but by the direction of God. He's waiting for somebody weak enough and simple enough. And I believe, in a manner of speaking, the folks who've been greatly used of God in our generation have been common people, sometimes slightly eccentric, have some kind of little tick, some kind of little twist, some kind of little flaw in the character, and folk look at them after they get to know them well and go, ha ha ha, Jackson, Bill, Jones, Smith? No way in the world he could have done any of that stuff if God Almighty had not been with him. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Annandale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Senator, I think that, the president in the past has said no one's been tougher on Russia than I have been on Russia. And we know that, he's stated that he'd like many past presidents, a reset with Russia. And he thinks it's, the nuclear superpowers, be good to get along, be good to have someone, align with you because China is such an economic power. So I understand that. But just let me, in terms of actions, he increased the defense spending dramatically. That's mostly aimed at Russia, the biggest defense bill appropriations we've ever seen. Increased nuclear weapons capacity and modernized nuclear weapons. That's primarily aimed at Russia. At Europe to increase its defense spending primarily aimed at Russia. Expelled 60 Russian officials after the poisoning in Britain. Crimea happened under Obama. The meddling happened under Obama. What did the Obama administration do that was tough?
Listen, I'm not here to defend Obama, but I am here to actually joke. But here, we ought to actually not deal in hyperbole. Let's deal in facts.
Wow, there's been
the only reason that Trump put sanctions on Russia was because Congress said, we don't trust you not to put sanctions, and they passed what was called CATSA that took away the president's authority to walk away from those sanctions. On the question of defense spending, yes, we've spent over $700 billion on defense, highest ever. Russia spends about $70 billion. My fear is we're buying the world's best 20th century military, where Russia has decided in cyber and misinformation and disinformation to take conflict to us. And frankly, we need to step up our game.
Oh, yes. I love it when they get to cutting up rough because Congress had to make Trump keep the sanctions. We don't know what Donald Trump was going to do. They took a preemptive action to make sure that the president didn't walk away from the sanctions because he had done a little bit of tweeting in it that they didn't like. And that is their job. Okay, so no, nobody's going to get extra credit for doing their job. I do not get extra thanks for showing up here and doing a radio show every day. That is my job. Okay, so we have to raise the bar a little bit here. Congress's job is to make sure that they're supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States, that they are taking actions legislatively that all further that aim. That's the bullseye target that they're aiming for every single day. Every action they take is supposed to work towards that aim. If they think the President of the United States might be inclined to eliminate sanctions that they feel are critical to our geopolitical stance against another foreign entity, it is their job to do exactly what they did. No credit given, no extra credit. You get credit, no extra, nothing extra, no, not special, next. What else have they done? I'm glad to hear they got something right. Good. Now what? What else do they need to do? What they should be doing is engaging in, the Heritage Foundation has these talks. And if you're in D.C. and you want to attend one of their talks, you just go on their website. You see what the next talk is. It's these experts. I mean, these people are brilliant. And you just sign up online. And then when you show up, you show your ID and sign in at the front desk, go through the little metal detector, and you can sit. And they often have on the breaks, they'll have little croissant sandwiches or hot coffee and tea. And you can drink those and you can go back in and you can sit and listen. And sometimes they're hugely attended because the person is a big name draw. And other times it's just, they happen almost every day, these briefings. And so what Congress could do is they could say, maybe the president doesn't have the clear understanding that we wish he would have on this issue. So let's get some leadership together from the House or Senate leadership. Let's organize a briefing session. Let's request some time with the president, and let's have maybe 2 or 3 congressmen from leadership Let's ask someone from the Democrat side, let's make it bipartisan. Let's request some time with the president to have these meetings. Now, if the president wouldn't take time to sit and have this meeting and have this briefing, to have this understanding that they're wanting him to have, then, that's when you go to the podium, public shaming. We wanted President Trump to have this briefing. He wouldn't. We want him to understand this particular topic. We feel like he needs an understanding on it. He won't meet with us. And I guarantee you they would get someone in the White House would sit down with them and have that briefing. Probably the president. I mean, let's not act like they don't have any tools at their disposal with which to get information to the president if they want him to have it. So, yes, they took that action, and that's great. Warner, who is a former Obama administration official, says, I'm not here to defend Obama's approach to Russia. He can't. I'll tell you why he's not there to defend anything Obama did in the Russia relationship from the Obama administration, because he can't defend it. He doesn't agree with it. He didn't like it. Nothing he could do about it. He couldn't influence President Obama, who only took his own counsel and that of Valerie Jarrett and his wife. And so the country just marched forward, limping along, letting Obama do whatever he wanted to do, letting Putin do whatever he wanted to do. What am I talking about? Crimea, that they're trying to pin on Donald Trump. Like, that's his problem. What can he do about that now? Nothing. He can't do anything about it. So there's a lot going on, a lot going on. And the Democrats know they don't have anything with the collusion thing. The minute Mueller forwarded over this indictment of the 12 Russians to our national security apparatus for investigation by them, he's basically admitting he's not going to go anywhere else with it. He didn't save it because he's building a case against these guys and he's preparing to go to trial. That's it. So now we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're closing the investigation into collusion. We didn't find sufficient evidence with which to bring charges against Donald Trump. Now, word on the street is that what happens is he keeps finding other things to investigate, and these other things are leading him closer and closer to the finances of President Trump, which do intersect with Russians because he did construction over there. And I feel like that's one of those ones where, you gotta decide if you really want to dance with the devil. If Mueller decides to start cracking open Donald Trump's finances when he declined to look at the financial dealings of Hillary Clinton, then he's going to completely obliterate any of the trust that so many Republicans have placed in him to do an impartial investigation. And that comes on the heels of the testimony by Peter Strzok, where he wasn't asked about his text messages or why he wrote them. He was simply told, you're no longer on these cases. That's all going to play a role. Now, he may not care about that, but I think people observing will. That's going to stink. Look, investigate whatever you want, but if you decide to investigate Donald Trump's finances, the question is going to be, why didn't you look into Hillary Clinton's finances? She has many more interactions with the Russians on a larger scale. So you've got this report, and I don't have multiple sourcing on this. Usually I like to try to find some outside links from the blog or website that I find a story on to make sure that I can kind of say, okay, they kind of follow the reporting, who originally reported the story. But it's worth noting that this was yesterday whatever. Today's Tuesday. You guys know once we get to Wednesday or Tuesday, I start to lose track of what day it is. This happens to me all the time on the show. Like, I probably need one of those little things that says it's Wednesday to pop up on my computer. So over at Zero Hedge, they have the video of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and they're at the podiums. And Vladimir Putin accuses Hillary Clinton of accepting $400 million in illegal Russian campaign contributions. He did this from the podium. Now, what are you seeing in the news? If you're looking all over, the news about the Helsinki summit is all about Donald Trump being too nice to Putin, his treasonous behavior. Now he's right up there with Pol Pot and, the Nazis. I mean, this is the kind of ridiculous comparison that's being made. Like, people died at the press conference. Did anyone die? Did you die? No one died. Okay, so no one was bombed. No one was gassed or ethnically cleansed. It was just a press conference. Whether you liked it or not, it was just a press conference. So you got Putin accusing Hillary Clinton of accepting these $400 million in illegal Russian campaign contributions. And obviously I won't want to see some receipts. You know me. I want, yes, did they get, okay, so show us an online trail of how the Russians donated the money to the campaign and it went through. Remember when Obama was getting donations from foreign entities and then it became a news story and they were like, he has to give that money back. He raised over $1 billion. And they were like, a lot of that comes from small campaign contributions from foreign countries. And we don't know if he's being influenced. And that's not the way our election processes work. And then it was this big scramble to try to figure out what of it was legal and what of it wouldn't fly. And so it's the same thing here. But $400 million? That's almost half of what she raised. That's a problem. And then for it not to be American media to break that story, for it to be Vladimir Putin, former head of the KGB and like all around bad dictator guy, calling Hillary Clinton on the carpet for receiving donations from his country. If this is true, oh my. So you've got, remember we discussed this on the show. We explained the Magnitsky Act and U.S. defector Bill Browder playing Congress with his personal fortune, helping to ignite a new Cold War. If this is just like, this is the kind of stuff that they usually make Hollywood movies. Back when Hollywood used to make really great spy movies, this would be one of those like plot lines that would really work well. So did she receive $400 million to her campaign from Russians? That question is so much more interesting and worthy of investigation by American reporters and our security apparatus than whether or not Donald Trump, a man who Russians barely knew, colluded with them to materially impact votes and the U.S. presidential election. Like, which of those things sounds more probable to you? I know leftists tend to simultaneously say that Donald Trump is like the silliest person alive. He lacks intelligence. He's a Cheeto. He's this, he's that. They just hurl the most ridiculous high school insults. Sorry, high schoolers, because I know y'all have game with insults, but they're not even worthy of repetition. But then at the same moment, they also believe that he is an evil mastermind who's currently running all kinds of really complex schemes, including colluding with Russians on, stealing the presidency. Instead of just admitting they lost, it's okay. There's honor in saying, I lost. I didn't get chosen. I wasn't the one. They didn't think I was the right tool for the job. I disagree, but they didn't pick me. There's honor in that. And I know there is, because I've been in that situation before where I did everything within my human capability to earn my way into a job, and they picked someone else. And then after you get done crying and moaning and telling your friend and praying and asking God, why didn't I get it? Then later you just realize, for whatever reason, they didn't see it for me. I didn't win that. And it's so freeing when you can finally get to a place where you just admit, whatever the circumstances, whatever the factors, they just gave it to the other person. You're thinking in the back of your mind, there's a little you in the back of your mind jumping up and down, yelling, it was mine, but they gave it to someone else. And that person's going to be back there jumping and yelling forever. You just have to silence them and move on. But it's so freeing to just say, I just didn't get it. It just wasn't me. And beyond that, and I know Hillary Clinton's not a practicing Christian and she doesn't, pray to God and get counsel from the Holy Spirit. I get that. But for those of us who do, when you can admit, I didn't get it, I didn't win, they didn't pick me, I wasn't the one, that opens you up to be where you are and to be effective where you are. And then later to see the path God had for you to something so much greater and so much better. And so I'm sharing that. It's like a little impromptu piece of key lime pie in the middle of this, spaghetti sandwich that we're having here about the Zero Hedge story about Obama and not defending, and then Hillary Clinton and the 400 million. I'm adding that in to just in this moment because, it hurts when we don't get picked for the job or the this or the that, or, when you find out you weren't the one who was chosen for whatever it was you were shooting for and you really worked hard and you put your all into it and you didn't get it. But God has plans for us, and his plans are higher than our plans. He can see the end, And he doesn't have to work his way back from there. It's not complex for him. This is what he does, working all things out for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. That's him. And so when we allow him to do that, and when we can just admit, I lost, I didn't get it, that then opens us up to walk into what he does have for us. And that's something that Hillary Clinton, she apparently is incapable of doing, and probably because she's not practicing Christianity. She's not praying. She's not submitting herself to God. She's not willing to admit the role that her actions played in preventing her from becoming the president of the United States. And I honestly believe, even with the interview we did last week, I honestly believe that is not her role. She's not meant to be the president of the United States. That doesn't mean I'm not going to work to stop it, and that I'm not going to, pay as much attention as I can and do all that I can, within the realm of what I can do to make sure that she's not the president of the United States. I would never vote for her. I would tell others, can't be. But the bondage that she's in right now, with the angry face and running around telling people about how, she didn't get to play full court basketball and she didn't get to do this and that, and highlighting all of the ways she wasn't privileged when she was ultimately very, very privileged growing up, very, very blessed. Her circumstances were just, many millions of kids around the country would have traded places with her in a heartbeat and never looked back and never complained had they had the opportunity to grow up the way she did and to get the education that she was able to get. But she's never going to be free of losing the presidency because she's unable to say what I just said. I didn't get it. It wasn't me. And so, this is one of those cautionary tales. Don't be like that. Don't be that person where you can't admit that you didn't get it. It wasn't you. It wasn't for you. Don't be that person. So it remains to be seen, and I'll be definitely looking for more corroboration on this. Obviously, the fact that Putin made this statement from the podium standing next to Donald Trump, he was lying about a whole bunch of other stuff. He might be lying about Hillary Clinton's campaign receiving $400 million from Russians. It could be a total fabrication on his part. But wouldn't it be great if our media apparatus, the reporters, the investigative guys who dig up all the dirt, quote unquote, on President Trump, would take 5 seconds off of that and look into this? I would love it if they could show definitive evidence that it was either true or untrue. Because if it's true, wow, look at Putin. Or if it's not true, more proof that he likes to lie. I'm open to either result. So when we get back, we're going to talk about these young Republican staffers who were put out of an Uber ride at a gas station when the Uber driver figured out they were Republicans. And then he said, "Welcome to the resistance." We're going to talk about that when we get back. Stay there.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Adopting children has made Psalm 139 come alive to Tony and me.
Verses 15 and 16 say, "You watched me as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book." We've kept those verses in our heart for many years. We know God has created all of our children for His glory and for them to be a part of our family.
And God knew before they were born that He would lend them to us to love and care for them here on earth. If you're considering adopting a child, read Psalm 139 and ask God to show you His plan.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for His service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
My name's Max. I'm 17. I thought meth would help me forget the anger I had towards my dad, but I ended up an angry drug addict. Thankfully, I came to Teen Challenge, and now I'm drug-free.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
There was a time where I was in the middle of doing something, and the Lord just really impressed upon my heart that I needed to buy my wife some flowers. I hadn't thought about it, hadn't done it in a while. I walk into the door of our little small apartment, and I have the flowers in my hand, and my wife's eyes connect with mine. Her eyes just well up with tears. And I immediately start thinking, what's wrong? What happened? What's going on? And she said, Abe, I've been wanting some flowers, but I know what our financial situation is, and I didn't want to be an additional burden on you because I know things are tight now. And man, it was just a moment where my wife and I just fall more deeply in love with the Lord and more deeply in love with one another.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk.
By relying on Him. Oh, God. Oh, Lord, I thank you. I thank you, Lord. I thank you, Lord.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Our driver said he needed to stop and get gas, and then he, quickly turned off and stopped the car and said, your ride has been terminated and you've reached your destination and I have the right to deny you service. And so we were all shocked and we politely got out of the vehicle and just, said bye, have a good night. And then he drove off and said, welcome to the resistance.
So this is what it's come to. You hear people in the backseat of your car, and if you've taken an Uber before, so if you take Uber Black or the very top line Uber, you pay a lot of money, but you get an Escalade or a Yukon. You get an extended vehicle where you can literally sit in the second and third row and chat, and the driver really can't hear you. There's also the issue of, so with Uber drivers, you can often get in the car, and I've had an Uber driver give me the side eye because I got in the back seat, but I'm paying for a ride. I'm not paying for a 30-minute chat. And often when I'm taking Ubers, I'm out of town. I'm usually in DC or somewhere for work, New York. And so I'm not there to chat. I've got all kinds of stuff I'm trying to manage in between the one stop that I'm leaving and the next stop. And I'm often going from hit to hit to hit. It's just literally running around for hours until the end of the day where I can try to catch a little bit of food and then head back over to my parents' house if I'm in the DC area, or back to the hotel if I'm in New York. And so I've noticed that some of the drivers, they just treat it like a drive opportunity. They make small talk when you first get in, but they kind of leave you to your own devices. They have some music on. They'll let you borrow their charger if your phone's almost dead, and they just take you where you need to go. Now, this situation that we're talking about here, you've got these young Republicans. They've been out all evening, and it's late. It's after midnight. They get in the vehicle, and there's 5 of them. So it's a pretty good sized vehicle, because when you tell Uber, the app, how many people are riding, they only send you a driver that can accommodate the number of people that need to be picked up. So they start talking about politics. And apparently it wasn't a, the Democrats are horrible type of thing. It was more of a, we accomplished this, we accomplished that, and what we should do next is, kind of like recapping their evening and, congratulating themselves. And this upset the Uber driver. And so he said, I need to stop for gas. He pulls over at the gas station pretty abruptly and then asks them to get out. And then when he says, I'm not driving Trump supporters around in my car. And then they get out, and then he says, welcome to the resistance, and drives off. Now, what they do is Uber drivers can report you just like you can report an Uber driver. In the app, there's a place for you to give them like a rating, and you can also submit comments, and they can submit comments about you. And so what he did was he preemptively submitted comments saying, look, they offended me with their conversation. And so the assumption there is that they're in the backseat cursing, or maybe they're drunk, or maybe, there's something really unacceptable about it. Because when you drop someone off early, you're kind of saying you don't want the entire fare, right? You're saying it was bad enough for you to interrupt the fare and you're not going to get paid. And so here's the problem. It was the middle of the night. He dropped them off at a gas station, 4 women and 1 man. So clearly they're in a large enough group that, they probably didn't have to worry about being mugged or anything. But if this is acceptable behavior for Uber drivers, then that means a single person who takes a phone call and it becomes apparent that they're a Republican or a Trump supporter, they could be put out on the side of the road or at a gas station alone with their bags coming from the airport. I mean, it really makes you wonder. So Uber is a fantastic service, and I love how they've got Uber drivers crawling all over the city like bugs. I mean, literally, when you look on the app to see how many cars are near you, if you're in DC, there's always at least 10 cars nearby within a block of you where you can you click and they send them to you. And so you get this ride. It's very reasonably priced, and you get to ride in a car instead of a taxi cab, because the taxi cabs are so nasty. But taxi cab drivers aren't allowed to put you out if you just happen to be a Trump supporter. Like, they have rules. And if Uber is a leftist company that plans on allowing their drivers to do that, then women, people riding alone, and anyone riding at night, you're not safe to drive Uber. So it changes the dynamic. Now, one of the congressmen who heard about this story, I don't remember his name, sent a tweet saying he would put $100 Lyft certificates to every single one of the ones who were put out of this car ride. And, you know, I think that's great. But it's not like Lyft is conservative. Like, businesses aren't supposed to be a political ideology. At least you don't think they're supposed to be one. I know, you know, Chick-fil-A is supposed to be conservative, and I believe the company is pretty conservative, and the owner of Chick-fil-A, you know, supports traditional marriage, etc. But Chick-fil-A doesn't put people out of the restaurant. When two people of the same sex come in and start, you know, basically giving each other mouth-to-mouth resuscitation at a table, the Chick-fil-A workers come over and they bring them a cup of water and say, let us know if you'd like to order any food. Thanks for coming to Chick-fil-A. That was their response to the kiss-ins that the homosexual movement launched against their company. They didn't throw anybody out. They just said, hey, thanks for coming in. We have water for you, and if you want to order any food, please do come up and order something. Let us know what you'd like. Now, I'm not so sure I would have that same reaction to two people coming into my business to take up space so that they could have a vulgar display of their affection for each other, but that's what they did. Every time people are given the opportunity to kind of show who they are, it seems like the Democrats are showing us something that isn't workable for our society. And I just think it's unacceptable. And no one wants to be treated like that. You get put out of the car on the side of the road at a gas station in the middle of the night, and you're a half an hour from civilization, so you got to wait there for a half an hour at the gas station for somebody to come pick you up to complete your ride? Come on. Is this who we are? Like Barack Obama likes to say. You know, he loves to say that. Is this who we are? I mean, I guess so. He's still out there talking too. It's not missed by me or anybody else who can remember anything that George Bush didn't say anything against him when he was the president, and George Bush was the outgoing guy. And Barack Obama can't seem to sit down or find his way to a vacation spot without approaching a podium and bad-mouthing the president. Even doing it kind of like Shade Brigade, he's bad commenting the president by not saying his name, but making sure everybody knows exactly. So, in the gun front, Second Amendment update type stuff, you've got a growing phenomenon in the land of Lincoln this year. A bunch of cities and counties are approving sanctuary status for guns. In other words, they're saying these weird pieces of legislation that are coming out of Chicago and the seat of power in Illinois, that they're not going to put up with that drama. There are actually 26, I believe, counties in Illinois who have passed, actually it's more than that. Mercer County Board unanimously approved a measure to make the county the 30th gun sanctuary county in Illinois. They want to tell the state, this is Mercer County Board member Brian Ansu. He's a Republican from New Windsor, Illinois. He says, we're telling the state that they cannot pass laws that impinge on our Second Amendment rights, which is pretty awesome. Of course, these laws are described as largely symbolic because counties and cities across the state have moved since March to declare their local region a sanctuary for gun owners, starting with the Iroquois County Board. And this came as a grassroots backlash against a package of gun control bills ranging from restricting those under age 21 to purchasing guns and bans on bump stocks and various licensing schemes for gun dealers that have seen success in the state legislature. So there are 102 counties in the state of Illinois, and almost a third of them have doubled down on their support of gun rights. And I just think it's fantastic. Even if it's largely symbolic, it kind of sends a message to the state legislature to let them know, y'all can pass whatever you want to, but we're believers in the Second Amendment down here. And we do need to protect our right to keep and bear arms. It's important. And there's going to be, other opportunities for us to see where people stand on this coming up with the votes, Supreme Court vote, and the primaries. We have primaries here in Missouri in August. So people should get informed and vote. And also then, of course, there's the midterm in November. Get informed, vote. I recommend that people actually get the party platforms. And I'm going to pull this right here. I have it right here in my folder for the show. A comparison of the 2016 Republican and Democratic Party platforms. It's at votinginfo.net. So you can print it off. See, it has both on here. And it has on one side the key issues of sex education, Obamacare, marriage, medical research, Iran, and foreign assistance. And these are all areas in the both party platforms that these subjects are addressed. And then on the other side, the key issues are human life, Planned Parenthood, judges, religious liberty, climate change, global warming, and education and school choice. And these subjects are covered in both the Republican and Democratic Party platforms. And then you can compare them because it's little summaries here. And then you can kind of decide, okay, which of these party platforms more closely aligns with my worldview and what I believe and what I would like to pay for and support with my tax dollars. And then that can help you to make choices from who's on the ballot. And the reason I say it like that is obviously I'm Stacey on the right. I'm on the political right. But this is a decision that it's not like I just woke up one day and said, I think I'm going to be Stacey on the right. No, I spent time studying the party platforms. Only I was doing that back when the Democrats were still kind of like, Democrats. and I was also comparing with what like our pastors preaching and teaching. And I was listening to some Christian radio, which, oddly enough, here it is a little over 10 years later. No, more like 15 years later. And I'm actually on Christian radio talking about this stuff. So, wow, what a circle of events. I had to make the decision for myself, and I did it. I wanted to do it from information instead of my emotions. I didn't want to so the knee jerk is this party racist or is that party racist? Well, that doesn't really address the economics. That doesn't address all the different factors that we as Americans, we're living our lives all day long. It's more than just whether or not we have a permanent tan. And in the big scheme of things, Christian radio, we need to be really brutally honest here because it's eternity that we're working towards, that we want to be found rightly working out our salvation when the Lord returns. So that means he'll find us, as the Bible says, in the fields working, that we'll be working out our salvation, yes, but also working on what he's called us to do. Of course, glorify God in all that we do, but discipling others, bringing others to the Lord, and helping our fellow man, putting our money and our resources in the places that God tells us to put them. And a part of all of that is rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, which means we can't make the decision based solely upon an emotional response to one candidate or another or one issue or another. It has to be rooted and grounded in what one party will do versus what the other party will do, because we're going to be held to account for that. And who wants to be held to account for things that you don't believe in? Excuse me. You don't want to be held to account for things that you disagree with, but you were, agreeing with them with your vote because of racism. Remember, the Bible doesn't even acknowledge any of that. It talks about where people were from. It talks just a hair about their physical characteristics, but mostly it talked about what they were like as people. Described that, he was a man after God's own heart, or, he was a man who prayed and his prayers were answered. Those types of things, that Mary said that she was sweet and said to the angel of the Lord, who told her she was going to be pregnant, and which meant ostracized. And really, it was the destruction of her reputation, and she was a virtue. And she said, "Be it unto me as you have described." Wow. Just think about that. You've been told by an angel of God that you're going to have your reputation destroyed and you're going to carry a baby, and you've never known a man. This is going to bring shame upon your family, and your husband that you're betrothed to is going to, what are you going to say to him? An angel told me I was going to get pregnant. Seriously. And instead of questioning, I think I would have had questions. Y'all know me. I'd have been like, so how's that going to work? When is this going to happen? How many more? Do I have days? Do I have an hour? What's going to happen? And also, do I have a choice? Am I allowed to say no here? I need to think this through. I'd like some time. Can I have some time to just mull this over? That would have been me. Instead, she's like, "Be it unto me as you have said." Come on, y'all. This is not about race. This is about something so much bigger. It takes information. And it's out there. All we have to do is seek it out. And then pray. And then go forward with confidence, following what God has asked us to do. All right, that's the show for today. Thank you for being here. We will be back with you tomorrow with more news and information, culture, politics, all of it from the Christian perspective on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.